Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. For 7 consecutive nights, a strange blood-red bus stopped in front of my house at precisely 3:33 a.m. This was bizarre, especially since Frost Hollow, like most small American towns, had no public transportation. What made it even more unsettling was the fact that people were boarding and disembarking each time. They all appeared unnaturally tall and thin, and when I tried to focus on their faces, they seemed to blur into a flesh-toned haze. On the 7th morning, unsure of what else to do, I called the sheriff's department. A woman with a thick southern accent answered the phone. "Morning, sheriff's office, how can I help you?" she drawled. I hesitated, unsure of how to explain this bizarre situation. "I'm not sure who to call about this, but there's this bus that stops in front of my house every night at 3 a.m. It drops people off, and others get on. I live on Slaughterhouse Road, past the abandoned school. It's strange because it happens so late and there are always people waiting for it." I felt foolish as I rambled, sweat forming on my brow. The woman stayed silent for a moment, and I could hear her soft breathing. "We don't have buses that go to Slaughterhouse Road, sir," she finally said firmly. "There's no public transportation in this town except for the school buses. Could it be a private company? Did you see any logos or route numbers on the bus? Sometimes nursing homes or medical facilities use private transport for patients." I'd been avoiding this detail, but now I had no choice but to share. "Yes, there's writing on the side. It says Inferno Express, and the route number is 666. The line went quiet for a couple of seconds. I could hear her breathing again, as if she were waiting for a punchline. Then, without a word, she hung up on me. I stared at the receiver, listening to the whine of the dial tone. Determined to gather proof, I made a plan. At 3 a.m., I dressed in all black, jeans, sneakers, and a long-sleeved shirt, hoping to stay inconspicuous. With my digital camera in hand, I stepped outside. The night was warm and humid, a gentle breeze carrying the sweet scent of summer air over the rolling hills. I felt like a criminal sneaking around, even though I was only planning to capture video evidence. Crossing the road, I saw my neighbors' windows were dark. The area consisted mostly of woodlands with scattered houses providing plenty of places to hide. I crouched behind thick bushes a few hundred feet from the swampy patch where the bus always stopped, right at the edge of my neighbor's property. From there, I had a clear view without being seen. Glancing at my watch, I saw the minute hand inching closer to the time. My chest tightened, doubt creeping in. This was my last chance to back out. Sweat trickled down my forehead as I closed my eyes, listening to the stillness. Moments later, the distant rumble of an engine broke the silence. My heart raced as I pressed the record button. Turning the camera toward myself, I whispered urgently, "My name is Landon Peer. I live in Frost Hollow on Slaughterhouse Road. For a week now, a bus has been stopping in front of my house in the middle of the night. The people on it, they aren't right. They're too tall and too thin. I'm recording this in case something happens to me. If anyone finds this..." My voice trailed off as the screeching brakes of the bus shattered the night. The smell of exhaust and gasoline hit me, and I froze as the blood-red vehicle rolled into view, stopping just a stone's throw from where I crouched, hidden in the shadows. The swampy brush was alive with mosquitoes, their incessant buzzing filling the humid air. They landed on my neck and arms every few seconds, but I dared not move. I kept the camera steady, trying to muffle my breathing, a paranoid feeling creeping in as if the people on the bus somehow knew where I was and what I was doing. The bus gleamed in the moonlight, its blood-red paint fresh and vivid. The windows looked like horizontal eyes, long, dark ovals that stood in stark contrast to the bright, sinister exterior. I double-checked the camera, relieved to see the small red recording light glowing. My only worry now was whether the faint glare of the screen or that tiny red dot would draw attention, if the beings on the bus could even see such things. With a shriek of rusty metal, the door at the front slid open. An interior light flared to life, its fiery red glow spilling out and illuminating the eerie scene. The bus's windows lit up like glowing scarlet eyes, their light dancing in strobe-like patterns that cast long, unsettling shadows into the surrounding swamp. At the front of the bus, I spotted the driver. He wore a black suit with white buttons and polished boots, his attire disturbingly reminiscent of an SS officer. He was unnaturally tall, his bone-white head nearly brushing the ceiling. Two lidless black eyes bulged grotesquely from his skull, the size of overripe oranges, giving him the appearance of a monstrous praying mantis. I gasped as his eyes turned toward me. I wondered, with a growing sense of dread, if those massive alien eyes could detect the tiny red recording light on my camera. My question was answered moments later. Faceless silhouettes began stepping off the bus, their figures illuminated by the crimson glow. I zoomed in through the camera, desperate to catch any details. The lens showed everything with unsettling clarity. Smooth, featureless skin stretched taut across their egg-shaped heads, devoid of eyes, noses, or mouths. Their long arms hung nearly to the ground, ending in twisted fingers like the roots of a gnarled tree. They wore orange jumpsuits similar to those issued to local prisoners, their hairless skin rippling subtly as if they were breathing through it. The figures scattered in different directions, some moving into the swamps, others creeping toward nearby houses. One approached a neighbor's house, its movements unnaturally deliberate and exaggerated. It peered into a window, its faceless head pressing close to the glass, with long, grotesque fingers cupped around its sides as though blocking out sunlight that didn't exist. Its stiff, tiptoeing movements were awkward, as if it only understood human behavior secondhand. Its black shoes were dull and far too large, doubling the length of any human foot. The bus remained idling on the road, its engine rumbling loudly. The driver shifted, pushing himself up from his massive seat. He stooped forward, bowing his smooth, hairless head as he stepped out. Like the faceless passengers, his movements were exaggerated and unsettling. His claw-like hands rose and fell in a rhythmic motion as he tiptoed forward, each step slow and deliberate. A sickening realization gripped me. He was heading in my direction, his bulging black eyes fixed on me, widening with a manic, unblinking intensity. My heart pounded as his psychotic grin stretched across his chalk-white face. He moved faster now, shoving his way through the dense bushes separating the road from my hiding spot. Panic consumed me. I stumbled to my feet, desperate to flee, but the thick swamp lay behind me. My first step sank deep into the soggy earth, water seeping over the moss and collapsing under my weight. I cursed loudly, my arms flailing to keep balance. I nearly toppled forward into the murky water, but then a hand shot out, cold and unyielding, clamping down on the back of my neck. Yanking me backward, the hand felt scalding hot, as if its owner's flesh burned with a fevered intensity. My digital camera slipped from my grasp, hitting the swampy ground with a wet thud. "Get off me!" I screamed, clawing at the hand gripping my neck like iron. I couldn't see the bus behind me, but I felt myself being dragged toward it, stumbling over sharp rocks and exposed roots. Each time I tripped, the searing fingers only dug deeper into my flesh, yanking me upright again. Pain flared as blood trickled down my neck and back, warm rivulets soaking into my shirt. When we reached the pavement, the driver hurled me to the ground with brute force, my body slamming onto the asphalt. Agony seared through me as skin tore from my knees and elbows. Cuts and bruises throbbed across my limbs, but I slowly raised my head, blinking against the haze clouding my vision. I forced myself to focus on the bus and froze, my breath catching in my throat. The driver's seat loomed empty behind the open door, but it wasn't the absence of the driver that horrified me. It was the stairs leading inside. The steps were lined with human bones, arm and leg bones laid neatly side by side, creating a grotesque path into the vehicle. Many were yellowed and cracked with age, but others gleamed with the whiteness of recent death. My gaze shifted upward, and the sight struck me like a thunderclap of terror. The driver's seat was an abomination. Hundreds of grinning human skulls formed its frame, their hollow sockets staring out in every direction. Skin, pale and leathery, covered the seat's front and back, while countless human teeth jutted from the flesh in jagged rows. The teeth extended upward in crisscrossing patterns, stretching to the top of the bus. My trembling gaze fell on the driver, now standing over me. His impossibly thin body cast a long shadow, one elongated arm outstretched to point at the open door. His pose reminded me of the Grim Reaper silently beckoning the dead to follow. His bulging black eyes glittered with lunacy, and a grotesque grin stretched across his smooth, white face. "No, I don't want to," I pleaded, my voice trembling. "Please don't make me get on. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come out here." The driver didn't move. His eerie grin stayed fixed, his face like a lifeless death mask. Behind him I noticed movement. Two tall, faceless humanoids in bright orange jumpsuits appeared, their heads tilting down as if to observe me. I couldn't tell if they truly saw me or if their movements were hollow imitations of human behavior. Suddenly, the creatures scuttled forward, their skeletal arms stretching toward me. I scrambled backward, but their burning hot hands clamped onto my wrists with inhuman strength. My screams echoed into the night as they lifted me, dragging me toward the open door of the bus. No neighbors came to my aid. They shoved me into the fiery red glow inside. The light burned my eyes as I stumbled down the aisle, catching glimpses of the passengers. Each seat held emaciated figures with smooth, featureless faces. Their skin rippled and shifted, distorting whenever I tried to focus on their heads. The creatures gripping me forced me toward the back of the bus. There, a young boy, no older than 10 or 11, sat huddled in a seat, his wide, terrified eyes darting between me and the other passengers. They threw me beside him before retreating in silence. The bus door groaned shut, the sound of rusted metal filling the air. The driver was back in his seat, his grotesque grin visible in the rearview mirror as he stared directly at me. "How'd you get here?" the boy asked, his voice small and trembling. I turned to him, startled. His pale skin stood in sharp contrast to his dark eyes and jet black hair. With high cheekbones and a gaunt frame, he had an almost vampiric appearance. I don't know," I stammered. "I was grabbed, kidnapped. What's going on? Who are these things? Where are they taking us?" I kept glancing at the motionless figures around us, but none turned to look. Their blurry heads remained pointed straight ahead, their bodies frozen in eerie stillness. Only the driver moved, his hands turning the wheel as the bus began to rumble forward. "They're taking us to the playpen," the boy whispered, his voice trembling. "They showed it to me in my dreams. I used to see them outside my window at night, people without faces, tall and thin. I told my parents. They thought I was just having nightmares, but when I finally fell asleep, they showed me everything." "Okay, so what is it? What did you see?" I asked. His face turned pale and he shook his head. "I don't think you really want to know," he replied. "Both of us will be there soon enough, and then you'll see for yourself." I learned that the boy's name was Ian, and I told him mine was Landon. He said he was from the other end of Frost Hollow and had been on the bus for days without food or water. "It circles around to different towns," Ian whispered. I glanced out the window, taking in the dark desert that surrounded us, with sand dunes swirling on both sides of an endless highway. I hadn't noticed when the landscape had shifted from forest to desert. Those things without faces, they come into people's houses, get inside their heads and their dreams. They make you think horrible things. They used to scream at me, telling me to kill myself. I call them the stalkers. "That's a good name for them," I said, still staring out the window at the shadowy dunes. "We're not getting out of this, are we, Ian? I mean, alive?" "Probably not," he answered, his voice empty, hopeless. In the distance, on the horizon of the dark, dead desert, a black monolith rose high into the air. It looked like a lighthouse, but it had no windows. Its outer walls seemed to be made of polished obsidian or onyx, stretching hundreds of stories into the cloudless sky. The bus started to slow down. The crimson lights above flickered on. I looked forward and realized that all the stalkers had turned their blurry heads to stare directly at me and Ian. The driver, too, never once looked away, his eyes fixed on us through the rearview mirror. The bus came to a halt. Now arriving, the playpen. A robotic female voice chimed from the speakers. The door at the front of the bus flew open, and everything went deathly silent, except for the engine idling. "I think they want us to get out," Ian whispered nervously, rising to his feet. I wanted to resist, to fight back, but with dozens of faceless stalkers watching us in their eerie, frozen poses, my courage failed me. My legs unsteady, I stood and followed Ian down the walkway. The faces of the stalkers seemed to blur and ripple, following us with growing excitement. I had no idea what awaited us outside, but deep down, I sensed that horrors lay ahead. Stepping down onto the cold, inky pavement of the street, I felt the chill of the desert air. The wind swept across the dunes at a terrifying speed, dark clouds of sand obscuring the black sky. The bus door remained open, its passengers all watching us, the driver's eyes never leaving us. I wanted to get as far away from those creepy stalkers as possible. "Let's go," I said, shouting over the roaring wind as I placed my hand on Ian's shoulder. He flinched away, looking small and scared. Together, side by side, we started walking down the road. It wasn't long before we came across our first body. A mummified corpse lay on the side of the street. Its dried flesh was clinging tightly to its bones, its eyeless sockets staring upward. Its mouth was open, frozen in what seemed like a silent scream, a black hole filled with sand. Ian gasped and staggered backward, making a strangled cry. "Hey buddy, it's okay, it's just a dead body," I said. But Ian shook his head, pointing desperately at the corpse. I followed his finger and noticed something strange. The body began to shake and rattle. Its limbs splayed out, jerking up and down, and the ragged cloth covering its chest and legs ripped apart with a soft tearing sound. Wet black tentacles covered in dozens of eyes erupted from the corpse, snapping apart its remaining bones and flesh with ease. The ribs jutted outward like spikes as something hellish slithered out. It rolled on its tentacles, a ball of wriggling limbs covered in something slick and shiny. Though the creature was the size of a small dog at first, its width and height quickly grew. It had no head or central mass, just a mass of eyes blinking wildly in chaotic, random patterns. The eyes looked human, bloodshot, and dilated with fury. "Get away from it!" Ian screamed in terror, his voice high-pitched and filled with a fear I had never heard before. I heard a child's voice before something gripped my arm, pulling me back. I stumbled, nearly falling. The tentacled creature slithered toward us with incredible speed, its many eyes focused ahead, crazed and furious. As we turned, I caught a glimpse of the stalkers watching us from the sides of the street. Their blurred faces remained hidden in the sandstorms blowing past, but their tall, inhuman silhouettes stood out in the darkness. They reminded me of spectators watching gladiators perish in the Colosseum. "What is it?" I screamed over the roaring wind. "What happens if it catches us?" Ian, breathless with terror, sprinted ahead of me. He was incredibly fast. "Don't let it catch you," he screamed back. I saw the monolith ahead of us, only a few hundred feet away. A surge of hope filled my chest as I saw the massive threshold, glowing with white light. But as I got within a stone's throw of it, something warm and slick wrapped around my ankle. I screamed as I fell forward, seeing Ian disappearing through the doorway. His silhouette stood sharp and clear for a brief moment before the white light swallowed him up like a hungry mouth. "God damn it, help me!" I cried, crawling towards the light. I kicked and struggled against the tentacles wrapping around my leg, their grip like iron bands. I dragged my hands through the sand, feeling myself being pulled back. My head smacked hard against the pavement. Stars danced in my vision, and in the gloom I almost lost consciousness. Through the haze I saw more stalkers, always watching from a distance, their flesh rippling with excitement at the thought of witnessing death. More tentacles wrapped around my waist. I looked back, only inches away. Furious, dilated eyes stared at me. The tendrils reached for my mouth while others held my head still. I didn't know what would happen once it got inside me, but I instinctively knew it would be something terrible. I heard a harsh shout and felt something crash into the creature on my chest. The tentacles suddenly retracted from my face and head, The creature's eyes turned toward whatever new threat had arrived. A thin man with a long beard and haunted eyes stood above me, wielding a homemade stone club. It looked like it had been whittled from sandstone, the end jagged and sharp. The creature hissed like a snake as the man swung at it again, and finally, mercifully, it released me. I rolled away, coughing and gasping. "Run, you idiot!" the man yelled, smashing the creature through one of its many eyes with the sharp end of his club. The eye exploded, showering black blood and viscous fluid. The creature's hissing grew into a distorted wail, splitting the air, as if hundreds of voices were screaming in unison. I didn't need any more encouragement. Shell-shocked and terrified, I scrambled to my feet and sprinted the last few steps toward the threshold. I glanced back and saw the man following me, the creature hissing and gurgling as it chased us. Together we fell through the doorway of white light. As soon as we crossed the threshold, the creature stopped, its eyes furiously blinking and glaring. A few heartbeats later, it slithered away, its silhouette vanishing into the shadowy doom outside. "Well, that star spawn almost got you," the man whispered, clapping me on the shoulder. "Good thing I was coming back this way. I went out hunting." He showed me a dead rattlesnake slung across his back. "I'm Teddy, by the way," he said, extending his hand. I just stared at it, and after a moment he let it drop. "Star spawn?" I asked. He nodded eagerly, his brown eyes gleaming. He looked extremely thin and malnourished, his clothes tattered and falling apart. I wondered how long he had been trapped here. "That's what we call them, yeah," Teddy explained. "They come off the black god. Parts of his body sometimes fall off when he's sleeping, little parts here and there, but they grow back into those things, the star spawn. If they get their tentacle down your throat, it's game over, buddy. A little piece of them breaks off and starts growing in your stomach, eating away at your organs. Muscle until it decides to break through," Teddy explained. "It's not a quick death either. You could be in excruciating pain for weeks before it kills you." I looked around the room of the Black Tower where we stood. A massive chamber with gleaming obsidian walls surrounded us, stretching up dozens of feet to a flat black ceiling. A bright spotlight beamed down on us, illuminating the room in stark white light. Stairs made of the same stone spiraled up the outer perimeter of the circular room, disappearing into a gap in the ceiling. "My friend came through here," I asked. "Do you know where he is?" Teddy shook his head. "What's your friend's name, stranger?" he asked. I laughed uncertainly, then introduced myself. "Well, he's got to be upstairs with the others." "The others?" I asked. Teddy nodded. "We're not the only refugees here, Landon," he answered. "The bus brings more victims all the time, from all over the world. A lot of them don't last long. The star spawn often get them, and if they don't, the stalkers hunt them down and torture them to death. I've seen a lot of bodies skinned alive, people caught by the stalkers." "Well, let's go see them," I said. "I want to make sure he's okay. He's just a boy, you know." Teddy looked at me grimly. "He's not the only child who's been brought to this place," he answered. "I've seen more corpses of children here than you could possibly know." I walked up the stairs with Teddy at my heels, rising through the gap in the ceiling. There was an even larger chamber above, stretching up thousands of feet. At the top, I saw something massive and black with thousands of tentacles. It was stuck to the flat ceiling, slick and wet. The countless enormous eyelids on its limbs were tightly shut in sleep. Drops of slime occasionally fell from its body, pattering softly as they hit the floor. I saw an old woman sitting next to a small fire with Ian by her side. She had a rattlesnake on a spit and was cooking it. Ian had a leather satchel of water in his hands, which he drank from thirstily before passing it back to her. I remembered him saying he'd been trapped on the bus for days, and I wondered if he had any food or water that whole time. I walked forward, waving and smiling, feeling much more hopeful now that Ian was alive and well. I glanced nervously up at the tentacled monstrosity, uncertain whether I should be afraid or not. "The black god sleeps above us," the old woman whispered. "Do not wake him. We must escape before he wakes up," Teddy said urgently, putting a calloused hand on my shoulder. "We're going to try to hijack the bus. It's the only way between worlds. If we stay here, we will all certainly die, including the boy. It's only a matter of time. But if we can kill the driver..." "What about all the stalkers?" I asked. "It's not just the driver," Teddy whispered. "Whatever's on the bus, the Black God is far worse. His sleep grows more troubled as time passes. We can see his tentacles twisting in his nightmares. Once he awakens, those nightmares will spread throughout the playpen. Right now, we're only hunted by the star spawn and the stalkers." "I met an old man who saw the Black God awaken," the old woman said. "When I got here, he was still alive. Every few months, the Black God comes alive to feed. And he said that the corpses walk when that happens. The dead scream in the sky rips apart, and everything moving gets hunted down like vermin to be absorbed into the Black God's flesh. They live for weeks, being slowly digested and driven insane by the pain." "So, how did he survive?" I asked. She shrugged. "He said he hid in the bus. The driver gets out sometimes to hunt, and he snuck in. The Black God missed him, but he was the only one. I found out the old woman's name was Jackie. Like Teddy, she wanted to get out of the playpen immediately. The stalkers and star spawn won't come in here," she said. "They're afraid of the Black God, and rightly so." "It's suicidal to be in here," Teddy muttered. "That thing could wake up at any minute, and we'll be the first ones sucked into hell if it does. I've heard the screams of people being eaten by the Black God's flesh. It sounds like they're being burned alive. They go on for weeks, months." "Stop it, Jackie." "You're scaring the boy," Jackie insisted. I looked over at Ian, seeing she was right. He looked ready to pass out, his skin turning an ashen white. Jackie pulled the roasted rattlesnake off the spit, tearing it apart with her hands and handing pieces of it to Ian and Teddy. She looked at me with a raised, wrinkled brow. "Do you want a piece?" I shook my head, feeling slightly nauseous just looking at the dead, burnt snake. Its head was still attached, its open eyes blackened and staring. "So what's the plan here?" I asked. "How do we get back?" Teddy glanced at me, chewing a mouthful of rattlesnake. He lifted his homemade sandstone club and nodded past Jackie. I followed his line of sight and saw a few more primitive truncheons nearby. "That's it," Teddy said. "We're going to bludgeon the driver and all the stalkers, then steal the bus." I hesitated. "You have a better idea?" he asked, his tone serious. In truth, I didn't. The four of us stepped back out of the stone monolith that housed the Black God, the endless paved road stretching into the horizon. Armed with the primitive stone truncheons, we walked side by side, constantly scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. "There are bodies everywhere," Teddy said over the roar of the wind. "Most of them have star spawn hiding inside." I wondered how often the bus passed this way. But at that moment, chaos erupted. I spotted a star spawn with a punctured eye rolling furiously down the pavement. I screamed and pointed, but before I could react, something slammed into me from the side. I fell hard into Ian, knocking both of us down. We sprawled in the sand as two stalkers stood over us, their insane faces blurring and jerking from side to side. Their long, twisted arms reached toward me, and with a blinding moment of panic and agony, I felt their sharp fingers puncture my left eye. I screamed, jerking back as they tore into my eye. It exploded with a powerful jet of blood and vitreous fluid, and my vision went white with pain. Through the haze of agony, I barely realized the bus was speeding toward us. A small star spawn hissed with animal hunger before a tire ran over it, causing black blood to burst from it like a water balloon filled with sludge. Teddy came up behind the stalker, bringing his heavy stone club down on the back of its head. I heard a wet crack as it collapsed on top of me, its fingers still clutching my dismembered eye. I realized the optic nerve and blood vessels were still attached, running along a few inches from the mutilated socket. With a rush of adrenaline, I pushed myself to my feet, feeling the blood vessels tear apart like snapping string. I nearly passed out, but Ian and Teddy steadied me, each putting a hand on my back. The bus stopped in front of us, its door shrieking open as the first stalker descended the steps. I heard a primal scream from behind us, from the direction of the monolith. I turned in terror and saw the top explode in a shower of volcanic stone. Massive tentacles, hundreds of feet long, reached blindly out. The black god pulled itself up like a colossus, towering over the world. Its many gigantic eyes glared down at us. "It's starting!" Teddy screamed. "We need to get on that bus now." Staggering, I watched them run forward, and I followed behind, feeling weak and sick with my one remaining eye. I saw the driver descending the stairs. His black eyes bulged as he stared up at the sky. I realized with horror that the clouds were raining fire. The flickering flames lit up the world as the black god roared with a primal scream. Teddy ran forward, raising the club to strike at the driver. The driver casually raised one hand, grabbing Teddy by the neck and lifting him off the ground. His sharp fingers dug deep into Teddy's skin as he gurgled. Weakly, Teddy brought the club down, but the driver threw him aside. Teddy twitched, suffocating on his own blood, his eyes rolling back in his head. Jackie and Ian ran at the driver together, closing in on him from both sides. Ian struck the driver's long, emaciated leg under his black suit. The driver slashed at Jackie's face, cracking her bones with a vicious blow. As his leg gave way, the driver buckled and his furious, lidless eyes turned toward Ian. He reached out, dragging the boy down with him. I saw Jackie on the ground, her eyes stabbed through, blood spurting from her body. I stumbled forward, raising the club, and brought it down hard on the back of the driver's head. His skull collapsed under the blow as he continued to claw at Ian, stabbing at his face and neck, opening up his throat in an instant. I heard gurgling and weak cries as I jumped onto the bus, sickened by the blood and death. I ran up the steps, never looking back, my vision turning white with pain. I started the bus, and the engine rumbled to life. It was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. My hands, sticky with gore and clotted blood, gripped the wheel as I drove down the freezing, dark streets of the playpen. I glanced in the rearview mirror and almost screamed. Every seat was filled with stalkers, their blurred faces staring straight ahead. Their long, mannequin-like bodies jerked and twisted like one single hive mind. Ahead, the dark street disappeared into a spiraling vortex, the color of fresh blood. I accelerated, pushing the bus as fast as it would go, afraid to look back at the stalkers. The blood-red light dissolved to reveal my street, Slaughterhouse Road. I slammed on the brakes and glanced back, only to see a stalker inches behind me, its twisted fingers reaching out to grab me. Their heads jerked side to side, blurring with seizure-like movements. I heard the cry of anticipation and bloodlust as I opened the door and fell out of the bus. Sharp fingers clawed at my head, and fresh blood ran down my face as I crawled across the pavement, screaming and crying. Thankfully, one of my neighbors heard me and came out, shining a flashlight in my bloodied face. Shortly after, I lost consciousness. I remember waking up in the hospital, but my nightmares always took me back to the playpen and the black god. I think they always will.